Pranam. Gita Dhyanam. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatva Manusandadhami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshinim. O Bhagavad Gita, with which Lord Narayana himself gave enlightenment to Partha, the ancient sage Vyasa included it in the Mahabharata. O Goddess, showerer of the nectar-like knowledge of non-dualism contained in your 18 chapters, O my affectionate mother, the destroyer of rebirth, I meditate upon thee. Krishna Vandana. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Son of Vasudeva, the slayer of Kansa and Chanur, extreme delight for Mother Devaki, O Lord Krishna, the supreme teacher of the universe, my salutations to you. And Lord Krishna has so beautifully explained to us in this 13th shloka of the Kshetradnya Vibhag Yoga. He has explained to us all about the Kshetra so far till the 11th shloka that we read last. He told us about the Kshetra, what is this field, what is this body, and what are the desirable attributes in this body that can take us forward on this path of spirituality, on this path of self-knowledge, on this path of Atma-jnana. What are those qualities? And Sri Krishna has meticulously listed down all those requisites, all those things that are required to make ourselves eligible to get into that stage of getting Atma-jnana, getting Brahma-jnana. The last shloka that we read, there Sri Krishna told the ultimate thing that is required for this body to make ourselves eligible for the Adhyatma, for the Atma-jnana, for the Brahma-jnana. And what are those two things the listed in the 11th shloka? The Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam, constancy of thinking about that knowledge of the Atman. Constancy. Not once in a while, not in any haphazard way, but a constantly deliberating upon the knowledge of self, knowledge of the true self, constancy in that, nityam. Then, tattva-jñānārtha darshanam, perceiving that the end of the knowledge of truth, perceiving that. Realizing that end of the true knowledge, realizing that culmination of the knowledge of truth. Tattva jnana artha darshanam. And Sri Krishna very clearly told us this is what is called as the real knowledge. Etad jnanam iti proktam. This has been declared to be the ultimate knowledge. The adhyatma jnana and tattva jnana artha darshanam. This is having brought yourself to that level of graduation and post-graduation through all those qualities described till here, till the 11th shloka. Now you have prepared yourself to gain that, to attain that which is really called as the knowledge. And Sri Krishna says, Ajnanam yat ataha anyatha. Everything else in this universe is ignorance. Knowledge of the self, that is only the true knowledge. Realizing the culmination of the true knowledge. Tattva jnanārtha darshanam. Darshanam is realization, perception, the actual get a vision of that end of the true knowledge. Where that knowledge ultimately takes us. That is the last point. Beyond that, there is nothing more to be realized, nothing more to be perceived. Then the faculties, They fail to work after that point. All our internal instruments, they fail to work after beyond that point. That is the last point, and realizing that last point, that is the real knowledge. Everything else is ignorance. Ajñānam yata ataha anyatha. So this is what Sri Krishna has brought us to this point. And to that Sri Ramakrishna had told us that with all these preparations now, as in that example that Sri Ramakrishna gave, when the pond is covered with all that moss and reed and dirt and dross, we can't see water inside. We have to first remove that scum aside. And by following all these teachings from 7th shloka to 11th shloka that Sri Krishna wants us to evolve ourselves into that being, we have started preparing ourselves to remove that moss, to remove that reed, to remove that scum from the top surface of the pond. And now we are preparing ourselves to take the vision, to look at that clear water which is lying underneath. That all that ignorance is gone. Sri Krishna has told us everything else apart from this is ignorance. So get ourselves into that state where we are prepared to shake off this ignorance. We have prepared to cut off this ignorance and get into absorbing, get into the realization of the true knowledge of the Brahman, true knowledge of the ultimate reality. Now Sri Krishna says, having spoken about the Kshetra part, now Sri Krishna is going to tell us something about the one which is to be known, that Kshetradnya. Sri Krishna says, jñeyaṃ yattatpravakṣyāmi yajjñātvāmṛtamaśnute anādimatparaṃ brahma na sattannāsaducyate. Now Krishna says that jñeyaṃ yattatpravakṣyāmi, I am going to describe, I am going to tell you that which is to be known. Now you have prepared yourself. Now you have qualified yourself to get into that state of getting the higher knowledge. Now, having prepared yourself, having taken up all those desirable qualities that I have told you from the 7th shloka of the 13th adhyaya till the 11th shloka of this adhyaya, Kshetradnya, you have made this Kshetra a fit instrument now. Now it is a fit instrument. Earlier it was not a fit instrument. Earlier I had all that ignorance. Earlier I had all that egotism. Earlier I had all that attachment to me and mine. Earlier I was so possessive of me and mine. I was not a fit instrument at that time. But now, having followed the teachings from 7th till 11th shloka, I have now made myself a fit instrument. I have made myself a fit pupil. I have made myself a capable student of gaining that higher truth. And now Sri Krishna says, I am going to tell you. Sri Krishna says, jñeyaṃ yattatpravakṣyāmi, I am going to describe you. I am going to describe you that which is to be known. Yajñātvāmṛtamaśnute, having known which, you will plunge into that ocean of immortality. You will gain immortality. You will attain to immortality. That knowledge I am going to give you. I am going to tell you about that which is to be known. Having known that, you can attain immortality. Yajñātvāmṛtamaśnute. Anādimatparaṃ brahma. And Sri Krishna says that anādimat, beginningless, param brahma. This Supreme Brahman is beginningless. It is not that this Brahman takes birth, stays for some period of time and then vanishes into oblivion. No. Sri Krishna says this Brahman is anādi. There is no beginning to it. Na sat asat ucyate. And this Brahman, this Brahman is beyond Sat and Asat. This Brahman is beyond the real and unreal. This Brahman is beyond being and non-being. This is what I am going to tell you about, Sri Krishna says. So, this is an introduction to the knowledge of Kshetradnya that Sri Krishna has started in this 12th shloka. That I am going to tell you. Now that you have made yourself fit, now you have made yourself capable of understanding what I am going to tell you. Now I am going to describe you that which is to be known. And having known that ultimate truth, you are going to attain immortality. Why you are going to attain immortality? Because you are going to cross over that limit, cross over that threshold of the cycle of birth and death. The moment that cycle of birth and death is crossed, the moment that cycle of birth and death is broken, there is nothing but immortality. And why so? Krishna says, because this Brahman that I am going to tell you about is anādi. It is beginningless. It is not that the Brahman is coming into existence at some point of time, spending some time, and then getting destroyed into oblivion. This Brahman can never be destroyed. This Brahman is ever there. It is anādi. There is no beginning. It is beginningless. And this Brahman is beyond Sat and Asat. This particular concept of Brahman being beyond Sat and Asat is extremely difficult to comprehend at this stage of time, of course. But Sri Krishna is going to tell us, Sri Krishna is going to beautifully explain to us how this Brahman is beyond Sat and Asat. And we are also going to read with the commentary of Swami Chidbhavananda that he has given here, how Brahman can be beyond Sat and Asat. Because everything in the gamut, everything in the ambit of this Prakriti and Purusha is Sat and Asat. That much we know. That much knowledge we have got from all these teachings till now that Sri Krishna has given. Sri Krishna in the chapter 9, he has told us that he is beyond life and death. Krishna also spoke himself, talking about himself as Purusha, in that Vishwarupa Darshan. He said, I am Purusha, I am Sat, and this Prakriti is Asat. Now, if Purusha is Sat, Prakriti is Asat, how can Brahman be beyond that? Because Brahman, we consider Purusha to be nothing but Brahman. But Sri Krishna here says, Brahman is even beyond that. In the ambit of Purusha and Prakriti, there is still some kind of differentiation. Yes. When we say Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya, there is still these two. Brahman as Sat is one, and Jagat as Mithya, Jagat as Asat is another. But the real truth, the ultimate reality is much beyond the Sat and Asat. So what Swami Chidbhavananda has said, that in relative existence, the immortality of the Devas and the death of human beings emanated from Saguna Brahman. Now, when we talk of Brahma, the Purusha and Prakriti, Brahma as Purusha and the creation as Prakriti, we are talking about the Brahman with gunas. The Purusha with 3 gunas becomes Prakriti, gets manifested as Prakriti. And till that time, there is this separation between Purusha and Prakriti. But a stage comes when our knowledge takes us beyond the Purusha and Prakriti, and when it takes us beyond that Purusha and Prakriti, whichever is associated with the 3 gunas of this Prakriti, the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, that is in the arena of the Sat, which is not governed by the 3 gunas, is Asat, but still, that still is part of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha with attributes of sattva, rajas, tamas is manifested as Prakriti. But the Brahman is beyond Purusha and Prakriti. Now, in Nirguna Brahman, there is no modification of any kind. In Nirguna Brahman is devoid of any of these three qualities, three attributes of sattva, rajas, tamas. Nirguna Brahma doesn't get afflicted. Saguna Brahma gets afflicted. Saguna Brahma manifests itself as Prakriti because of sattva, rajas, tamas. But the Nirguna Brahma, the Nirakara Brahma, it doesn't have any attributes of sattva, rajas and tamas. That principle, that eternal principle, that ultimate reality is pure consciousness. That is the ultimate Chidbhavananda, having neither a beginning nor an end. Now, while the Devas have a relative immortality, now in the sphere of evolution from smallest the life force in this creation to the so-called highly evolved child of the Lord, human being, so-called. After the human being phase, there comes a phase of so-called Devas. But even they have limited immortality. It is not that they get become immortal altogether, like we have seen in that passage where Sri Krishna told us that even those dwelling in Brahmaloka, they also have an end at the end of the cycle of Brahma. Then this great Lord, the Parabrahma, again draws back everything into its own. So even Devas have their kind of end. May not be 100 years lifespan of human beings, maybe million years, but even then there is an end. But the Nirguna Brahma is absolute immortality. Because there is no beginning, it is anādi. Since the Brahman is anādi, there is no anta for the Brahman. So automatically it gets into that frame of immortality. The Jivatma who intuits this Brahma Nirvana gets merged in Brahman. This Jivatman, which is this tiny fellow who is dwelling inside this body, who needs this Kshetra. This Jivatman needs the Kshetra to dwell for some time, to spend its time away from the Brahman, away from the Paramatman. And when the time comes for Jivatman to merge with the Paramatman, then there is no coming back again. That is the ultimate Nirvana, that is the ultimate liberation. He is no more affected by the relative Sat and Asat. And in that state, once the Jivatman gets merged with the Paramatman, then there is no affliction of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. There is no Sat, Asat. There is no being and non-being. Then there is only Ekam Sat. That is the only reality then. He is no more affected by the relative Sat and Asat, being and non-being, the manifest state and the unmanifest. Then there is no need for further births, there is no need for further deaths, and it is escaping from the cycle of birth and death. So Sri Ramakrishna has beautifully explained this. He says, Akhanda Brahman can be experienced in Samadhi only. Nobody can teach you. You cannot read what Akhanda Brahman is in any books. That can only be experienced in Samadhi. What follows is all silence. Once we get to know what that Brahman is, we cannot utter a single word. We cannot describe. We become totally silent. That is only to be experienced. That cannot be thought of. That cannot be spoken of. That cannot be seen. It is only to be experienced. Inquiry into the nature of Purusha and Prakriti, knowledge and ignorance, all these cogitations come to an end. Till the time I am using my brain power, using my buddhi to know what is this Purusha, what is this Prakriti, I am using all these faculties. Till the time I am saying Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya, I am using these internal faculties. I am using these words. I am using this so-called knowledge to talk about the Brahma and the Jagat, to talk about the Purusha and the Prakriti. But when the ultimate realization comes, I become silent. Beatitude alone persists. After that, there is nothing but bliss. That is nothing but anandam. There, the position of the Jivatman is the same as that of a salt doll, incapable of surviving a sea bath. And this is a beautiful example that Sri Ramakrishna always used to give to his disciples and devotees. That a salt doll, a doll made up of salt, once wanted to know the depth of the ocean, depth of the sea. So what happens? That salt doll tells people, okay, I will go inside that ocean and I will come back and tell you what is the depth of that ocean, what is the depth of that sea. Now, when the salt doll goes to the sea, what will happen? Just the salt doll will become one with the ocean and no coming back again. So that is what happens when this Jivatman ultimately merges into the Paramatman. When Jivatman gets to know its true the reality, that it is part of the Paramatman which has got away from that huge, unlimited, asim, anādimatparaṃ, then there is no coming back. That is what Sri Krishna says now. This is what I am going to tell you about that which is known. And having known that, you are going to get into that state of immortality. You are going to plunge in that ocean of immortality, never to come back. You are going to be like that salt doll, going to see the depth of the ocean, depth of the sea. And once it goes into the sea, the salt doll becomes one with the sea. And this is what now Sri Krishna is going to tell, that this Brahman is beyond the Sat and Asat. Parabrahman is beyond Sat and Asat, and it is Anadi. So, having touched that nectar of immortality, you are never going to come back. So, this is the 12th shloka of the Kshetradnya Yoga, and then Sri Krishna is going to further elaborate on what is to be known. That he has already told us here. I am going to tell you that which is to be known, and having known which, you are going to become immortal. Because that I am going to tell you about is beginningless, and it is beyond being and non-being. It is beyond Sat and Asat. So don't have any confusion over that, Sri Krishna says. I am going to put you into that state of how to become immortal. I am going to teach you that. So let us wait for those further passages, further verses that we are going to read further in this 13th adhyaya of Kshetradnya Vibhag Yoga. Till then, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Sri Ramakrishna. Jai Thakur Jai Ma. Jai Swami.